This story is very meaningful. Everyone should hear it. Listen to Brian tell the story. My name is Emma, a 26-year-old woman with a stubborn streak and a heart that refuses to give up on people, even when they've made it clear they don't want me around. I'm married to Ryan, 29, a self-made man who turned his love for coffee into a thriving chain of organic cafes across the state. We've been together for 3 years, and while I adore him, his family has been a thorn in my side from day one. His mother, Linda, just turned 50, and his siblings, twin sisters Amy and Mia, 23, and little brother Jake, 21, treat me like I'm some outsider who crashed their perfect little world. I've always been a people person, the kind who'd rather fix a broken bridge than let it crumble. But with them, it's like I'm banging my head against a brick wall. Still, I keep trying because that's who I am, someone who believes effort matters, even when it's not returned. Here's where it all went to hell. 2 nights ago, I stood in my living room staring at Ryan as his mother's voice echoed in my head from earlier that day. I don't consider you family, Emma. I'd prefer you not be there tomorrow. My hands trembled with a mix of fury and disbelief as I recounted how Linda had banned me from the 50th birthday party I'd spent weeks planning for her, the one I'd paid for out of my own pocket while her precious kids did nothing. I'd booked her favorite restaurant, La Dolce Vita, a charming Italian spot with red checkered tablecloths and flickering candles, where she and Robert used to sip wine and laugh over plates of pasta. I'd ordered her favorite lasagna, rich with layers of cheese and sauce, and a tiramisu so decadent it could have melted her icy heart, if she had one. I'd even tracked down her book club pals and distant cousins, people she hadn't seen in years, all to prove I could belong in her world. And she'd thrown it back in my face like it was trash. Ryan sat on the couch, his jaw tight, his hazel eyes clouded with frustration as he ran a hand through his dark hair. I told you, Emma, he said, his voice low but firm, each word heavy with the weight of years spent dealing with them. They don't deserve your effort. I wanted to scream, to cry, to hurl the vase of daisies on the coffee table at the wall, but instead, I made a choice that flipped the script entirely. I canceled her party and turned it into mine. It wasn't a snap decision. The hurt had been simmering all day, bubbling up as I replayed Linda's words in my mind. After we'd left her house, I'd sat in the passenger seat of Ryan's truck, staring out the window at the blurring lights of our suburban neighborhood, my nails digging into my palms. How could she do that? I'd muttered, more to myself than to him. Ryan glanced over, his grip on the steering wheel tightening. She's always been like this, cold, controlling. I should have stopped you sooner. His apology only fueled my anger. I wasn't mad at him. I was mad at myself for thinking I could change them. By the time we got home, I was pacing the hardwood floor of our cozy little house, the one we'd painted sage green ourselves last summer. I'm not letting this go to waste, I said, spinning to face him. I paid for it. It's mine now. Ryan raised an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement breaking through his tension. You're serious? I nodded, my resolve hardening. Dead serious. That's when I called Jessica. She's my ride or die, a 27-year-old whirlwind with a pixie cut and a social media following that could rival a small celebrity. She answered on the first ring, her voice crackling through the speaker. Emma, what's up? You sound like you're about to start a war. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. I kind of am. Linda banned me from her party, the one I planned, so I'm taking it over. Bring your camera. I want this documented. Jessica whooped, her excitement infectious. Oh, this is going to be epic. I'm there in 20. I hung up and started texting my crew, my old college roommate Lila, who's a graphic designer with a wicked sense of humor, and my coworker Ben, a laid-back guy who always knows how to lighten the mood. Ryan watched me, leaning against the kitchen counter with a mug of coffee. You're really doing this, he said, half question, half statement. Damn right, I replied, my fingers flying over my phone. You in? He hesitated, then nodded. I'll call Mike and Chris from the shop. Might as well make it a night. The next evening, La Dolce Vita was transformed. I'd spent the afternoon there, ripping down the gaudy floral centerpieces I'd picked for Linda and replacing them with sleek black candles and string lights that cast a warm glow over the room. Tony, the manager, grinned as he helped me rearrange the tables. You're a force, Emma, he said, wiping his hands on his apron. This place hasn't seen a party like this in years. I smiled, but inside I was still seething, the sting of Linda's rejection driving every move I made. Jessica burst in at 6 p.m., her camera already rolling. Welcome to the ultimate clapback, people, she announced, panning across the room as Lila and Ben trailed behind her, carrying a crate of craft beers. Ryan's friends, Mike and Chris, showed up in flannel shirts and easy smiles, clapping him on the back. "Didn't think you had it in you to rebel, man," Mike teased. Ryan shrugged, but I caught the flicker of relief in his eyes. He needed this as much as I did. The night was a blur of laughter, music, and defiance. I stood by the bar, sipping Chianti and watching my friends dance to a playlist Jessica had thrown together, indie rock with just enough edge to match my mood. Lila twirled Ben around, her curly hair bouncing, while Mike and Chris challenged Ryan to a ridiculous game of who could stack the most breadsticks. I felt a weight lift off my chest, replaced by a fierce, giddy pride. "This is better than anything I planned for her," I said to Jessica, who was live streaming to her 50,000 followers. "Damn straight," she replied, zooming in on me. "Say hi to the internet, queen. #Emma Strikes Back is trending." Ryan slid up beside me, his arm brushing mine, and for a moment we just stood there, soaking it in. "You're incredible," he murmured, his voice soft against the noise. I turned to him, my heart swelling. "We're incredible," I corrected, and he smiled, a real unguarded smile that made everything worth it. But the high didn't last. The next morning, my phone lit up with a text from Amy. "You're a selfish bitch for stealing Mom's birthday. La Dolce Vita was her place with Dad, and you trashed it." I stared at the words, my stomach twisting. Trashed it? I'd made it better. I showed Ryan, expecting him to roll his eyes, but his face darkened, a storm brewing behind his calm exterior. "That's it," he said, slamming his coffee mug down so hard it chipped the counter. "I'm done with them." I blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" He paced the kitchen, his voice rising with every step. "They've been leeching off me since Dad died. Mom's bills, the twins' clothes, Jake's stupid car, and now they're attacking you? We're cutting them off, Emma. All of them." My jaw dropped. Ryan's business had been their lifeline for years. Without him, they'd sink. "Rye, are you sure?" I asked, my voice trembling. He stopped, his eyes locking on mine. I've never been more sure. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to cheer, but another part worried he'd regret it. That night, after dinner, we sat on the couch, a half-forgotten movie flickering on the TV. I nudged him, my voice gentle. "Tell me why. Why now?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, and then it all spilled out. "When Dad died, I was 21, he began, his voice rough. Mom had never worked, the kids were in school, and his savings ran dry fast. I dropped out of college, worked 2 jobs, then pitched my cafe idea to investors. It took off, but they changed. Mom got demanding, Amy and Mia got spoiled, Jake got lazy. They'd say Dad wanted me to provide, guilt me into it." He paused, his eyes distant. "Then I met you, and they freaked. They thought you'd pull me away, so they tried to sabotage us, called you names, told me to dump you. I fought back, and they distanced themselves but still begged for money. I listened, my heart aching as he laid bare the burden he'd carried. I didn't tell you because I saw how hard you tried with them," he finished, his voice breaking. I didn't want to crush that hope. Tears pricked my eyes as I pulled him close, his head resting on my shoulder. "You don't have to protect me from this," I whispered. "They're the ones who should be ashamed." He nodded, his breath shaky. "I know. That's why I'm done." The next day he called his bank, freezing the accounts he'd set up for them. I watched, half proud, half terrified, as he severed ties that had defined his life for nearly a decade. Then they came for us. 2 days later the doorbell rang, a harsh, insistent buzz that jolted me from chopping onions in the kitchen. Ryan opened the door, and there stood Linda, Amy, Mia, and Jake, a united front of fury. Linda's face was flushed, her graying hair wild, while the siblings glowered behind her like a pack of wolves. "We need to talk," Linda barked, shoving past Ryan into our living room. I dropped my knife, wiping my hands as I stepped out, my pulse racing. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the chaos unfolding. Linda whirled on me, her finger jabbing the air. "You stole my birthday, turned my son against me, and now he's cutting us off? This is your doing, you manipulative little—" Amy cut in, her voice shrill. "You're a gold digger, Emma. You've brainwashed him." Jake smirked, leaning against the wall. "Yeah, bro, you're ditching us for her?" Ryan's face reddened, his hands clenching at his sides. I could see the pain flickering in his eyes, the way their accusations sliced through him. "Get out," I said, stepping between them. "You're upsetting him, and you don't belong here." Linda laughed, A harsh, grating sound. "This is my son's house. I'll stay as long as I damn well please." She turned to Ryan, her tone shifting to a sickly sweet plea. "Honey, I didn't raise you to abandon us. Your father would be heartbroken." I saw Ryan flinch, his resolve wavering, and that's when I snapped. "Enough!" I shouted, my voice booming. "You're all parasites living off Ryan's kindness while you spit in his face. You call me a gold digger? Look in the mirror." They froze, their smugness faltering. "Leave or I'm calling the cops," I added, my hands trembling with rage. Linda glared, but they shuffled out, her parting shot ringing in my ears. "Your dad would hate you for this, Ryan." He broke down the second they were gone, collapsing onto the couch with sobs that shook his whole body. I knelt beside him, my arms around him as he cried, my own guilt gnawing at me. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, stroking his hair. "This is my fault." He shook his head, his voice muffled. "No, it's theirs. You just made me see it." We stayed like that for hours, the silence settling over us like a fragile peace. But Linda wasn't done. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number while I was at work, designing flyers for Ryan's latest cafe opening. "Hello?" I answered, distracted. "Emma, it's Sophie," a familiar voice said. Sophie, Ryan's old assistant, fired by Linda years ago for getting too close to him. "I heard about the party drama. I've got something you need to know." My curiosity piqued. I met her at a diner downtown. She slid into the booth across from me, her brown eyes nervous but determined. "Linda tried to take Ryan's company after Robert died," she said, her voice low. "She forged papers, claimed he'd used family money to start it. He didn't. He built it himself, but she's been holding that lie over him ever since." I stared at her, my mind racing. "Why tell me now?" She shrugged. "I saw your posts. You're fighting back. I figured you deserved the truth." That night I told Ryan. He sat at our kitchen table, his face pale as I relayed Sophie's story. "I knew she was desperate," he said, "but not that low." I squeezed his hand. "We need help. This isn't over." Enter Detective Mark, a gruff, middle-aged guy Jessica recommended after a true crime binge. "I'll dig into Linda's past," he promised over coffee at his cluttered office. "If she's got skeletons, I'll find them." I nodded, hope flickering amidst the dread. 2 weeks later, Mark delivered. "Linda's a fraud," he said, tossing a folder onto my desk. "She's been skimming from Robert's estate for years, funneling it to offshore accounts. The kids knew." I read the papers, my anger boiling anew. Ryan was livid, his quiet demeanor replaced by a fire I'd never seen. "They're done," he said, dialing his lawyer. But before we could act, Linda struck again. A legal notice arrived claiming Ryan owed them millions for stealing from Robert's estate to fund his business. It was a lie, but the media ate it up, headlines screaming about family betrayal and corporate greed. Jessica turned it into a circus. "We're going live," she declared, setting up her camera in our living room. "The truth's coming out, folks. Stay tuned." I hired Mark to counter their claims, and within days, he proved Linda's accusations were fabricated. The lawsuit collapsed, and she and the siblings were ordered to pay us damages. The fallout was brutal. Linda's cousins cut her off, Amy and Mia's influencer dreams tanked, and Jake scrambled for a job. Ryan and I stood stronger than ever, but I knew this was just the beginning of our fight to reclaim our peace. The dust from the lawsuit hadn't even settled when Linda upped the ante, proving she'd rather burn everything down than let us walk away. It was a crisp March morning, 2 weeks after the court ruling, and I was in the backyard sipping coffee, trying to enjoy a rare moment of calm. Ryan was inside, prepping for a meeting with his investors. His cafes were booming despite the scandal, maybe even because of it. The air smelled of damp grass and spring blooms, and for once, I let myself believe we'd won. Then I heard the screech of tires. I looked up just in time to see Linda's beat-up sedan peel into our driveway, followed by a sleek black SUV I didn't recognize. My stomach sank as she stormed out, Amy, Mia, and Jake trailing her like a pack of angry dogs. But it was the guy stepping out of the SUV who made my blood run cold, a tall, wiry man in a cheap suit, his slicked-back hair glinting in the sun. He carried a briefcase and a smirk that screamed trouble. "Emma!" Linda shouted, her voice cutting through the quiet morning like a knife. I set my mug down on the patio table, my hands already shaking with a mix of dread and defiance. Ryan appeared at the back door, his phone still in hand, his face hardening as he took in the scene. "What the hell is this?" he called, stepping out beside me. Linda marched up the lawn, her eyes wild with fury. "This is your wake-up call, Ryan," she snapped, jabbing a finger at him. "You think you can cut us off and humiliate us in court? We're not done." The man in the suit followed her, his smirk widening as he extended a hand I didn't take. "Name's Victor Crane," he said, his voice smooth and oily. "I'm Linda's new attorney. We've got a fresh angle, and you're not gonna like it." My heart pounded as I glanced at Ryan. His jaw clenched, but he kept his cool, crossing his arms. "You've got nothing," he said, his tone steady. "The judge saw through your lies." Victor chuckled, opening his briefcase and pulling out a stack of papers. "Oh, we've got plenty. New evidence, bank records showing you funneled Robert's estate into your little coffee empire. We're filing for a retrial." I felt the ground shift beneath me. "That's bullshit," I spat, stepping forward. "Mark proved you faked everything." Linda's lips curled into a sneer. "Mark's a hack. Victor's the real deal. You're going down, Emma, and you're taking Ryan with you." Amy piped up, her voice dripping with venom. "You thought you could play hero, stealing Mom's party and turning Ryan against us? You're trash." Mia nodded, flipping her hair. "Yeah, and now the world's gonna see it." Jake just glared, cracking his knuckles like some wannabe tough guy. I wanted to lunge at them, to claw the smugness off their faces, but Ryan grabbed my arm, his grip firm. "Don't," he muttered. "They're bluffing." Victor handed Ryan the papers, his eyes glinting with malice. "See you in court, kid. Better start selling those cafes." They turned to leave, Linda throwing one last barb over her shoulder. "You'll regret crossing me, Emma." I stood there frozen, the papers trembling in Ryan's hands as their cars peeled out. "They can't do this," I said, my voice breaking. "Can they?" Ryan scanned the documents, his brow furrowing. "It's nonsense. Forged dates, fake signatures. But they'll drag it out, bleed us dry with legal fees." He crumpled the papers, his calm cracking into raw anger. "She's trying to ruin me." I felt a surge of guilt, my chest tightening. "This is because of me," I whispered. "The party, the fight, it pushed her over the edge." Ryan turned to me, his eyes fierce. "No, this is her, Emma. She's been waiting for an excuse to control me again." I couldn't shake the unease, so I called Jessica. She showed up an hour later, her camera in tow, her energy a lifeline in the storm. "What's the latest drama?" she asked, plopping onto our couch. I handed her the papers, my hands still shaky. "Linda's got a new lawyer, some sleaze named Victor. They're coming after Ryan's business again." Jessica whistled, flipping through the pages. "This is next level petty. We need to fight fire with fire, go public, expose them before they spin it." I hesitated, glancing at Ryan. "You okay with that?" He nodded, his jaw tight. "Do it. I'm tired of hiding." Jessica got to work, live streaming from our living room. "Hey fam," she said, her voice bright but edged with urgency. "Emma and Ryan are under attack again. Linda's back with fake docs and a shady lawyer. We're not letting this slide. Had our Justice Forian trending now. Spread the word." I watched, my nerves buzzing as the views climbed, comments flooding in, some supportive, some vicious. "Gold digger wife strikes again," one read. "Linda's a psycho, Team Emma," said another. It was chaos, but it felt like armor, a shield against their lies. Then Sophie called. "Emma, it's bad," she said, her voice hushed. "I ran into an old coworker from Ryan's first cafe. Linda's been meeting with a guy named Victor for months, before the party. This was planned." My stomach dropped. "Planned?" I echoed. "Yeah," she said. "They wanted to tank Ryan's reputation, force him to settle. I've got proof, texts, receipts. Meet me tonight." I hung up, my mind racing. "Rye," I said, grabbing his arm. "This isn't just revenge, it's a setup." His face paled, but he nodded. "Get Mark on it." We met Sophie at the same diner, a dimly lit hole in the wall with cracked vinyl booths. She slid a USB drive across the table, her hands trembling. "Linda paid Victor to fabricate evidence," she said. "These are screenshots. Her wiring him cash, him bragging about burying Ryan. There's more. She's been siphoning Robert's old insurance money into a secret account." I stared at the drive, my anger boiling over into something colder, sharper. "She's a monster," I said, my voice low. Ryan took the drive, his hands steady despite the storm in his eyes. "Mark'll tear this apart," he said. "She's finished." Mark didn't disappoint. 3 days later, he stormed into our house, a grin splitting his grizzled face. "Jackpot," he said, tossing a thick file onto the table. "Sophie's intel checks out. Linda's been laundering money for years. Victor's a known con. He's got warrants in 2 states. I've got enough to bury them both." I felt a rush of relief, but it was tempered by exhaustion. What now? I asked. We countersue, Mark said. Fraud, defamation, the works. They'll wish they'd stayed quiet. The countersuit hit like a bomb. We filed the next morning and Jessica broke the news online, her live stream racking up millions of views. Linda's a crook, folks, she crowed, holding up Mark's file. Proofs here, money laundering, fake lawsuits, #LindaLees is live. The internet exploded, hashtags trending worldwide as Linda's facade crumbled. Her cousins called Ryan, horrified, swearing they'd had no idea. Amy and Mia's social media accounts went dark, their follower counts plummeting. Jake got caught shoplifting at a gas station. Karma, I guess. But Linda didn't go quietly. A week later, she showed up alone, banging on our door at midnight. Ryan was asleep, worn out from the chaos, so I answered, my robe pulled tight against the chill. She looked haggard, her eyes bloodshot, her hair a mess. You've destroyed us, she hissed, her voice raw. I stood my ground, my heart pounding but my resolve ironclad. You destroyed yourself, I said. You used Ryan, lied about him, and thought I'd let it slide. You're done, Linda. She lunged at me, her hands clawing, but I sidestepped, grabbing my phone. One more move and I'm calling the cops, I warned. She froze, her chest heaving, then crumpled to the porch, sobbing. He was my son first, she wailed. I felt a pang of pity, but it vanished fast. Not anymore, I said, shutting the door. The next day, Victor flipped, cutting a deal with the feds to avoid jail. Linda's accounts were seized, her house foreclosed. Amy and Mia moved into a dingy apartment, posting desperate pleas for cash online. Jake got a job at a car wash, his attitude washed away with the suds. Ryan and I threw a quiet dinner at home with Jessica, Sophie, and Mark, toasting to freedom. To us, I said, raising my glass, my eyes locked on Ryan's. He smiled, his hand finding mine. To you, he replied. The war was over, but I knew I'd never stop fighting for him, or for us. Linda's midnight meltdown on our porch should have been the end of it, but I'd underestimated her desperation. A week after her accounts were seized and Victor turned state's evidence, I woke up to a flood of notifications on my phone. It was 3 a.m., the room dark except for the faint glow of Ryan's breathing beside me. I squinted at the screen, my groggy brain struggling to process the chaos, hundreds of tweets, texts, and missed calls from Jessica. My heart sank as I opened Twitter and saw the trending hashtag Emma Cottleying. A grainy video was pinned at the top, already racking up 1 million views. It showed me at La Dolce Vita, laughing with Jessica, but the audio was dubbed, my voice, distorted, saying, I set Linda up from the start. Ryan's money's all I wanted. My stomach churned. It was fake, a clumsy edit, but the comments didn't care. Gold digger confirmed, one read. Poor Linda, said another. I shook Ryan awake, my hands trembling. Rye, look at this. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, and watched the video, his face darkening with every second. What the hell? He muttered, grabbing his own phone. It's not me, I said, my voice rising in panic. Someone's framing me. Jessica called then, her voice frantic. Emma, it's everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. I traced the upload. It's from an account linked to Mia. I felt a cold fury settle over me. They're not done, I said, my mind racing. Ryan nodded, his jaw tight. We need Mark, now. By sunrise, Mark was at our kitchen table, his laptop open, coffee steaming beside him. It's a revenge play, he said, tapping the screen. Mia paid a hacker to splice old footage, your voice from a work call, Jessica's clips from the party. Sloppy, but effective. I paced, my anger boiling into something fierce. How do we stop it? Mark grinned, a rare spark in his tired eyes. We don't stop it, we flip it. I've got Linda's laundering receipts and Victor's confession on tape. We leak that, and this video's toast. Ryan squeezed my hand, his resolve mirroring mine. Do it, he said. End this for good. Jessica took the lead, her live stream hitting the internet like a tidal wave. Emergency update, fam, she announced, holding up Mark's evidence. Linda's lies exposed, money laundering, fake lawsuits, and now Mia's pathetic deepfake. LindaLees 2 trending now. Let's bury this. The response was instant. Views soared, the fake video drowned in a sea of screenshots proving Linda's guilt. Mia's account was hacked by furious fans, her DMs leaking apologies she'd never meant to send. Amy posted a tearful rant, blaming me, but it backfired, her followers deserting her. Jake vanished offline entirely. Linda called that afternoon, her voice a broken whisper through the static. "You win, Emma," she said. "I'm leaving town. Just tell Ryan I'm sorry." I hung up without a word, my chest tight with a mix of triumph and exhaustion. Ryan pulled me into his arms, his breath warm against my hair. "It's over," he said, and for the first time, I believed it. We'd fought, bled, and won, and nothing could take that from us. The fallout from Mia's fake video was still rippling through the internet when I decided we needed a breather, something to remind us why we'd fought so hard. It was a Saturday morning, the first week of April, and the air carried that fresh, hopeful scent of spring. I stood in our kitchen, flipping pancakes while Ryan scrolled through emails at the counter, his brow furrowed but his shoulders relaxed for once. The countersuit had drained us, the public smear campaign had bruised us, but we were still standing. "Let's get out of here," I said, sliding a plate in front of him. "Just us, no phones, no drama." He looked up, a slow smile breaking through the tension. "Where to?" I grinned, my heart lifting. "The coast. That little cabin we rented last year. I need the ocean, Rye." He nodded, his hazel eyes softening. "Me too." We packed light and drove 3 hours to a rickety seaside cabin, its weathered wood perched above crashing waves. The salt air hit me as soon as I stepped out of the truck, washing away the grime of the past months. Ryan grabbed my hand, and we walked the empty beach, the sand cold under my bare feet. I felt lighter with every step, the weight of Linda's venom and the siblings' greed slipping off me like a shed skin. "We made it," I said, leaning into him as the wind whipped my hair. He wrapped an arm around me, his voice low but steady. "Yeah, we did. Because of you." I shook my head, tears pricking my eyes, not from sadness, but from a fierce, quiet pride. Because of us. That night, we sat on the porch with a bottle of wine, the stars sharp against the black sky. I'd left my phone off, but Ryan had snuck a peek at his before we'd agreed to unplug. "Jessica texted," he said, swirling his glass. "Linda's gone, left town with nothing but a suitcase. Amy and Mia are fighting over the last of her jewelry, and Jake's couch surfing with some buddy from high school." I took a sip, the wine warm on my tongue, and let that sink in. Linda, the woman who'd ruled Ryan's life with guilt and manipulation, reduced to a ghost. Her kids, once so smug and entitled, scrambling in the wreckage she'd left behind. I didn't feel joy, more like a hollow satisfaction, tinged with pity. "They'll never learn," I said softly. Ryan shrugged, his gaze distant. "Maybe not, but we did." He was right. This whole mess, the party, the lawsuits, the lies, had taught me something brutal but true. You can't force people to love you, and you shouldn't bleed yourself dry trying. I'd spent years chasing Linda's approval, bending over backwards to fit into a family that saw me as a threat. But in the end, it wasn't about them. It was about me and Ryan, about choosing who we let into our lives. "I'd do it all again," I said, meeting his eyes. "The fight, the chaos, just to end up here with you." He smiled, a real, unguarded smile that lit up the dark. "Same." Meanwhile, Linda's world kept crumbling, and I got the details later from Sophie, who'd turned into our unofficial spy. She called me the day we got back, her voice buzzing with gossip. "Emma, you won't believe this. Linda's in some nowhere town working at a diner. She's washing dishes, Em. Dishes! Amy and Mia got evicted after a screaming match over who gets Mom's old car, and Jake's buddy kicked him out for stealing beer." I sat on our couch, the phone pressed to my ear, picturing Linda in a stained apron, her hands wrinkled from dishwater, her pride shattered. Amy and Mia, once strutting around with designer bags, now clawing at each other over scraps. Jake, the cocky little punk, sleeping in his beat-up car. It wasn't revenge, it was justice, cold and unyielding, and it hurt them more than I ever could. But the real kicker came a week later. Jessica, bless her, had kept the story alive online, turning our saga into a viral cautionary tale. She sent me a link to her latest video, Linda's Last Stand, How Greed Lost It All. It had 10 million views, and the comments were a flood of support, people calling us heroes, thanking us for standing up to toxic family. "You guys taught me to cut off my own leeches," one wrote. "Emma's a badass," said another. I showed Ryan and we laughed, the sound echoing in our quiet living room. "We're famous," I teased. He pulled me close, his breath warm against my hair. "We're free." And that's where it stands. Open, messy, real. Linda's out there somewhere, scraping by, her kids lost in their own chaos. Maybe she'll claw her way back, maybe she won't. Maybe Amy and Mia will turn on each other for good, or Jake will land in jail. I don't know, and honestly, I don't care. Ryan and I are building something new. Maybe a second cafe, maybe a trip across the country, maybe just more nights like that one on the coast. The future's ours, unwritten and wide open, and that's enough. The lesson? Don't waste your heart on people who'd rather see you break than bend, and when they push, push back harder. So, what do you think? If you followed this wild ride, me against Linda, Ryan against his past, us against the world, drop a comment, hit that like button, tell me your own stories. Have you ever had to cut someone off? Fought for something worth keeping? I'm here, listening, and I want to know. Because this isn't just my story, it's ours.